You're listening to the Perth Property Show, Australia's only weekly property podcast by West Australian experts for West Australian listeners. Catch your latest episode every Monday at 7 a.m.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Perth Property Show. My name's Trent Fleskins, your host, and this week we are going for the first time ever right down to Albany. I hope everyone listening has been there for a holiday, whether you are from the East Coast or the West Coast. It's one of my favourite places in Western Australia. I went there a couple of years ago for Christmas, New Year's, one of the most beautiful places in WA. Lots of history, lots of beautiful beaches, a lot of development going on, a lot of Airbnb, and a lot of growth in the last couple of years. Finally, our man to talk that is one of the top agents in Albany. It's Kyle Sproxton from Merrifield Real Estate. Kyle, thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Trent. Thanks for having me.
Kyle, we always start our suburb spotlights like this one is off with a bit of history. It could have been our capital, right?
You're 100% correct, mate. It's one of the first, if not the first, settlements in WA. Roughly 1826, 1827 it was established, and at one point it was going to be the capital of WA. They liked it for the deep water port. I think they settled on Perth due to the Swan River.
I think they were in Perth because the French were sniffing around. And
Correct.
They thought, we really got to make sure we lock this down. Let's go settle in the Swan River colony. No one's going to bother with Albany. We've got Albany tied up. Let's go to Perth. And they all sort of just, we'll stay here now, right? But for a time there, it was going to be the capital of WA.
Yeah, that's right. They were really considering it. In fact, I think the reason they colonised Albany was because the French were sniffing around there as well. So there's actually a bit of history there with French roots there. And so pretty old. We're coming up to, 200 years now in a few years' time. So, yeah.
Obviously, it started in the early 1800s as a colony and then culminated in the early 1900s with World War One. The whole of the country pretty much culminating in the bay there. All the warships, the frigates, the photos you see at the War Museum of the main strip being full with marching soldiers and ladies throwing their napkins out on the ground. What a scene that would have been. That was, it was 100 years ago now, but it really had the spotlight then, didn't it?
Yeah, correct. And I think one thing that Albany did really, really well, no doubt with the support of the state government, was the 100-year centenary of the ships leaving in 1914. So in 2014, I think we had 40,000 people come to Albany or something absolutely ridiculous. And anybody that had a bit of land available, the city relaxed policies on letting people have caravans in their backyard. And just, if anybody had a bit of space, it was used for people to come to Albany. And now we've got the National Anzac Centre there up on the hill there overlooking the harbour and the ocean. And
it's a great place.
The view there is unbelievable. And in fact, all over Albany, we're very spoilt for views.
It is. I look at the geography of the place. It's quite a steep part of town when you look down and getting down into the bay. A lot of history there with whaling, for example, a long time ago. Obviously that stopped a while ago, and then being a centre for a lot of agriculture.
It's just a beautiful place, and some of my friends tell me that I should work for Tourism Albany because I absolutely love the place so much. But as you touched on whaling, Discovery Bay it's now called. They've done a lot of work there, spent a lot of money. We Albany locals, I think, just call it Whale World, but I think it is named Discovery Bay now. The history, the geography, it's just a beautiful place. I say to people, if you come for a holiday for a week, you can't do everything in a week that it has to offer. So
it's very unique in its ecology as well. You can go down south, Dunsborough, Margaret River. It all sort of, there's a lot of carry trees, a lot of marri trees. We've all done that, right? You go up north, a lot of red dust, a lot of iron ore. But Albany seems to just be not of this state nearly. It makes me feel like I'm in Tasmania or something like that.
Yeah, correct. And a lot of people draw similarities to Melbourne weather. I still think it's probably a little bit better than that. But no, you're right. We kind of have a bit of everything, right? So you've got beautiful beaches, which I think, rival that of Esperance. Then you've got the forests of Denmark down the road. Obviously, Denmark's its own place, but it is just on our doorstep. We've got Porongrups on our doorstep.
Bluff Knoll, right?
Exactly. Bluff Knoll and the Stirling Ranges as well, which is just beyond the Porongrups. You've got places like Chain Beach, which is named after the whaling ships. And then just beyond that is Bremer Bay. Granted, again, these are their own places, but they're on our doorstep. They're just a hop away, a day trip away. You're right. The ecology is just very different, and it is just so beautiful.
Let's talk about property history in Albany. What were the original blocks? How are they set up? Are we talking about acre, hectares, quarter acres. What did Albany look like back in World War One with regards to, if you look at these original blocks, these original houses, the original people? Who was there? How are they living?
Yeah, look, I dare say there was a lot of workers, I would imagine. Things like railway. There was a railway line back then, and when I'm going through homes now in the CBD and on the railway lines, people will say this was a railway cottage, and it was built from this wood from, whatever country, and it's hard to keep track of, to be honest. So I dare say there was a lot of workers.
Forestry was huge back
farming,
in the day.
forestry, fisheries, obviously. So, yeah, everything you would imagine from a coastal regional port city.
And when you look at the map, satellite imagery of Albany, even to this day, you can still see there's so much land still available within a kilometre or two of the town centre. There's many suburbs of Albany. It's not just one suburb. Just like Karratha, for example, you've got 4 or 5, 6 different suburbs in the town. We'd all speak about it being Karratha. Same with Albany, right? You've got Middleton, you've got Miramar, you've got Lockyer, all these places. They're also the greater Albany area. And you get, a kilometre or so out, and you're on big 1,000 square metre blocks, and there are still acreage that people haven't split up from decades ago. That transitions over time, and there's obviously a bit of density going through. And when we talk about lifestyle, you get down to the waterside, and there's some great nightlife these days, even a brand new hotel.
Yeah, correct. So one thing I will say about Albany is the amount of development that's actually gone ahead there in the last 10, 15, pushing 20 years, certainly within the last 10 or 15 years. A lot of that development was public money. However, there has been a lot of private money go in there as well. So the Hilton down there, Paul Leonetti was instrumental in making that
happen. Big name, isn't he?
He is massive.
He passed
massive
away recently.
Very, very recently. And Val Paul, and great
Godfather
man.
of Albany, really.
Absolutely, yeah. Great man. Not too many people would speak a bad word about Paul. He was a really great man. Did a lot for Albany, and he will be missed. So that's right next to the entertainment centre there as well. There's another site there that'll be developed. Obviously, you've got the site down at Middleton Beach, which was the old Esplanade Hotel, and I know a lot of people are very sad that place that is gone. However, we can only look forward. We can't look back.
Got some good new plans going on there.
Correct. That's right. The state government redeveloped that parcel so that it could be developed by obviously private money, and it goes on and on. The redevelopment or the refresh of Stirling Terrace was a big one. Even York Street has had a lot of work, student accommodation, the Centennial Oval, the list just goes on and on. We've redeveloped sporting.
Well, it's needed it, hasn't it? Because one of the themes you get when you're in Albany, when it talks about the history of Albany at the museums, is that from World War One, Albany really was in decline for decades. Not population decline, amenity decline, but it seems like since the early 2000s, there's been a real reinvigoration. And further to that, which is what we're here to talk about today, since COVID, there's been a huge surge in people buying property in Albany, moving back for that tree change that we've all been looking for, and you can understand why. And the market's finally started to recover. But on the flip side, still an extremely affordable market when you compare it to so many other places in the southwest that I would consider and I would posit are far less beautiful lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely. So the medium house price is roughly $435 at the moment. Latest REIT data, I could be a little bit out there, but it's about that. And that's only up from sort of $370, $380s. Now that hovered around that for a long period of time. Post-COVID obviously has gone up, but $435 for a family is pretty affordable, I would have thought. So you're right, you can actually get that sea and tree and hill and mountain, whatever you want, change for an affordable price.
How's work in Albany? If you were to move to Albany for work, would you get it?
Yes is the simple answer, I suppose. But where the housing is more affordable, perhaps the hourly rate is going to be a little bit less as well. So it's all relative, isn't it? The thing with Albany is we're very insular economy where you've got the port, you've got the fishing, you've got the agriculture, tourism. There's so much going on, but it is very within Albany. So we're not really impacted by what happens elsewhere, really. The farmers might get less for their grain, the fishery people might get less for the fish, the timber industry is another one that doesn't get talked about enough. So, if Japan doesn't want as much paper, I can't produce enough paper, then we might want less trees, or, it just goes on from there. But so the short answer is yes, there is work in certain fields.
Yeah, well, I would have thought tourism and hospitality, especially, just like anywhere else in WA. I really want to sell Albany to West Australians today. It's a place that I think is way underrated. I can't believe it took me 30 years to get there. Can you sell it a bit with regards to the amenity, schools, parks, local sporting teams? Is there the local footy team that everyone follows? Where are we focusing on here? And if you had $500,000 in the bank today, cash, where would you be buying today?
500,000. I'd definitely look at McHale, Bayonet Head, Spencer Park. You know, they're family suburbs. They're not far away. They've got all the paths and parks and just everything you really want. They're close to schools. The amazing thing about Albany is that everything is really 5 minutes away. You know, that you're not far from anything at all. There's the choice of high schools. There's 2 large high schools, Albany Senior High School and North Albany Senior High School, which
very imaginative names there.
Correct. Ashes and Nashes, if you will, Trent.
Okay.
There's also Great Southern Grammar. So for the people that want that private school environment, you've got that. So there's the best of both worlds. In the lower primary, you've still got Great Southern Grammar.
I'm assuming every suburb has its own primary school.
Pretty much, yeah.
And who's the local footy team?
There's the mighty Railways, mate. The Railways Tigers just won the premiership this year. My brother's won his 4th premiership for the Railway Tigers.
Right. And shout out to your brother.
Yeah, very proud of him. But then across the road, you've got the Royals Lions. You've got the Albany Sharks.
It's a footy town.
There is a big footy component for sure. There's the Mount Barker Bulls, the Denmark Magpies, and the North Albany Kangas as well. So.
Let's talk about property. You've given us that median house price. I want to start talking about who those buyers are at that median house price. So when you pick your phone up and you've got 10 missed calls after being away for a day, who are the buyers? Who are those 10 missed calls? Where are those buyers coming from?
There's still a lot of local buyers around, no doubt. That's always been the case. First home buyers feature in Albany a fair bit, obviously.
It's an accessible price point.
Correct.
For a first home buyer. They're getting their first home buyer's rate of duty as well underneath that 430, so a lot of the product should be quite accessible to them.
Yeah, correct. Less now post-COVID, obviously, as you've touched on, 430 being that threshold. Still, you're not paying a lot of stamp. Up to sort of 500, I think it is. It's still pretty good for first home buyers there. So young families is another one, or the second home buyers is another one.
Investors? Do you have many investors in Albany? Or
not in the last couple of years. So Albany's been fantastic for investors for a very, very, very long period of time because we are very insular. You know you're not going to get the high highs and you're not going to get the low lows, which I think is the really important part. So
how many of those investors are switching to Airbnb? I think that's been a critical factor in Albany the last couple of years. You have a massive undersupply of rentals. There's nothing available. Has it been a positive? Has it been a negative?
Talking to people around the place, accommodation is booked out, right? So if all of the hotels, motels, caravan parks are all booked out and the Airbnbs are booked out, then surely that's a good thing all over, right?
Yeah, holistically, it's a good thing. As an investor, you look at it and go, well, this is a feasible investment strategy for me. Whilst the Airbnb might be an alternative to some investors to the usual rental, I would suggest that in a place like Albany or Dunsborough, these sort of places, you could be a bona fide property investor with your first strategy being Airbnb and know it's probably going to be full most of the year and therefore at a substantially higher yield to your normal rental market.
Yeah, correct. And there's even businesses now that will manage your Airbnbs in Albany. So they'll maybe manage sort of 25, 30, whatever it might be.
Do the cleaning.
Correct.
Yep.
They'll manage the website. You basically buy the thing and forget about it and just reap the rewards. So you said booked out all year. I mean, in some cases, even if it was only booked out for half a year, you're still better than a normal long-term rental, right? So, but even the yields on a long-term rental in Albany have been good for a very, very, very long period of time. So even when the market was steady, not much happening between, whatever it was, 2012 through to 2019, 20, the yields were still very, very good.
Who are your sellers?
Everybody, really. So your first home buyers going into their second home. You've got your people that are absentee owners. So the people that are living elsewhere, they've maybe bought a holiday home or they've moved to Albany for a few years and now they're moving back to Perth or wherever. They may have rented those properties out. That's also another thing, is that there's a lot of people that have become reluctant landlords. So the reluctant landlords couldn't sell their properties in the last however many years, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. And now post-COVID, we're selling them because they can get their money back, maybe even make a little bit of money, right? So whilst they've had a good yield and they've been reluctant to be a landlord for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Now they're at the point where they can sell those properties, but I feel like we've already gotten through that now. So that was very much a 2021 thing. 2022, I think we've found a bit of an equilibrium now, but the stock levels are still very low.
Yeah, well, let's talk about how much is selling in Albany right now. I mean, if you can give us an idea of what 2018 looked like, what 2021 looked like, and what it looks like this year in terms of transaction numbers.
Transactions are still ticking along very nicely because the demand is still there, and although the stock is very low at any one given time, they are still trickling onto the market. But as fast as they're trickling on, they're trickling off again. So the transactions are very good. 2021 was the spike. I think there was 200-300 more transactions than usual. I feel like 2022, we're now back to kind of what it was, maybe a little bit up. If we had more stock, I dare say we'd be doing more numbers.
Yeah, so we see that a lot in Perth at the moment, is that there is a limited supply, and that's nearly what's holding the market back, is that there's definitely buyers. If there was more options for them to buy, there would be transactions.
Correct. And land is a big part of that as well, whereas at the moment there really isn't any land available. So that then feeds into the housing market. So established is really where the only, people can only go established, and then that feeds into the rental and on it goes.
Great segue there. Did Albany see a large spike in construction through the building grant space?
It was enormous, to the point where even now there's a huge hangover from that. And I heard on one of your previous podcasts you were saying how the federal government grant would have been enough, and really if the Labor and the Liberal government were talking, perhaps we could have just gone with the federal money, not the federal and state money, because I feel that they've really negatively impacted the market in a lot of ways. I mean, it's
too expensive to build. It's more expensive to build than it is to buy established. So everyone's just moving to established, and therefore supply is constrained.
Correct. And so the price is overinflated on established. So it's overinflated on a build, it's overinflated on a established, and therefore it's overinflated on the land, because there's still people that want to build, right? So they're going to go and buy the land even though they can't get a house built for, say, 2 or 3, whatever it is, years.
Yeah, and that structure has impacts on the rental market, where obviously massive shortages, and I don't think I can explain it enough. Albany is one of those suburbs in Western Australia that is the most critical in undersupply and rentals. We think about places like Broome, think of Karratha, Busselton, right? Albany is as critical, if not more critical. Anything we're experiencing in Perth, it's worse in Albany.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, so at the moment, I checked the other day, I think there was 10 rentals on the market on realestate.com.
Yeah.
Pre-COVID, you'd look and there'd be, say, 70, 90, up to 110, 20 at its sort of peak,
yeah,
right?
10.
And there's 10.
Are you getting any East Coast investors looking at those options, given the undersupply and going a great place to rent?
Yeah, so
yields are fantastic.
Yeah, so I think they were pretty onto it in 2021, and I feel where that's where they may have got in, where they've realised that it's on its way up. So they got in before the peak, I would have thought. Not so much now. I feel like Albany is the place where Perth people will come to Albany, East Coast people will go to Perth, and then Perth people will go to Albany or the regions.
Yeah.
So Busselton, Geraldton, whatever it might be.
Well, there's an opportunity there, I think, for a lot of people who are looking for that high yielding return where there's really not much downside risk on the rental vacancy side. It's Albany. Broome I find to be way too seasonal, way too much about the tourism. Karratha, again, a lot extremely high maintenance costs and insurance costs, those sort of things. Albany is just another town like any other town close to Perth. They don't have those extra costs, those extra risks. Because it's so protected on the downside from a rental position as an investment, where you're looking for that yield. People looking at 5% in Perth, geez, go to Albany and you'll see some serious opportunities there, because I think that's where it's going to keep going. The price for rentals will keep going up in Albany.
It's a solid opportunity for people, you're right. Even if the market does sort of come back a little bit, you're going to get those returns. They've never really dropped away significantly.
Beautiful place to pop in and check out your investment as well.
Amazing.
Well, let's talk about the price points. So if we were going to buy in Albany, what can we get for our money? What's the cheapest thing you can buy in Greater Albany?
Oh, gee whiz, there's some cheap buys out there. They obviously need a bit of work, but 250 will get you something. Will get you into a dwelling. Might need some work, as I say. That could even be on a 900 square metre block within 5 minutes of the CBD.
How's that, hey?
So pretty unbelievable. So if you're a handy person and you've got a few tools and you know what you're doing, you could absolutely get in at the very lower end.
Would this be a timber frame house?
Correct.
Is there a higher proportion of timber frame houses in Albany than, for example, in Perth?
Yeah, so I think Midland Brick did a really good job back in the day to convince people that double brick was the way to build a house, particularly in Perth. With the additional transport costs of that 4.5 hours, 5 hours from down the highway, brick veneer is certainly the way that houses are mainly built in Albany, or timber frame and clad. So now the James Hardie products are that good that we're seeing quite a few.
And no one's got an issue with it?
Not really, no.
one
It
goes,
looks fantastic.
There's not brick, timber.
Well, I mean, you go to swanky suburbs anywhere, Albany, Melbourne, Perth. They're the old Victorian cladded homes, aren't they? And everybody loves those. So it kind of just looks like that. It gives it a bit of character, and the way the energy ratings are now.
Well, that's right. You're not going to get a 7-star energy rating on a double brick home.
It's going to be hard.
Yeah. So I've said this before. It's funny how the second you step out of Metro Perth, everyone's cool with a timber home.
Yeah, they're great.
And Perth people are cool with a timber home,
Yeah.
The second you step out of Metro Perth.
Yeah, I must admit, Perth people have this obsession with double brick. Yep. So I don't know what that is, but there is a lot of people that have that obsession.
All right, $250,000 will get you a massive 900 square metre block and a house you can do up. What's the normal house what's the top of the bell curve for you in Albany?
Yep. So look, families wanting to get into a family home in sort of Yakamaya, McHale, you might get yourself a sort of 600 to 800 square metre block. It'll be a 4x2. It'll be modern. There might be a shed of some description in the backyard. You're probably getting into that for anywhere between 500 and 650.
Okay. Where does it start stepping up? What's your higher end in Albany?
Yeah, sure. So Emu Point's probably where you see a lot of really high transactions.
They get into the millions?
Absolutely. I mean, if they're on the water, we're talking in excess of 2 million. Middleton Beach is the other high end, and also the actual CBD of Albany, where you've got harbour views and you just walk into town and go to the new Premier Hotel or whatever.
Frederick Street, these sort of places.
Yeah, Stirling Terrace, that type of thing, Vancouver Street. You've also got Good Beach. Now, Good Beach is a fair trek out. So for Albany people, 25 minutes, long way. But if you're happy to make that trek out to Good Beach every day, there's some unbelievable properties up there which sell, for $1 million plus.
Is this around the bay?
Absolutely, yeah. Yep.
Development opportunities. There's a lot of blocks, full blocks in Albany still. When I look at the Google satellite, it's just a mecca for me as a subdivider. The amount of 900,000 square metre blocks with a small house at the front. You look at it, and all these novice property investors will look at that and go, "Oh, the opportunities there." Do you see a lot of it in Albany? Is the zoning available for it?
They've rezoned all of Spencer Park area because it is so close to the CBD, and there is a hospital and schooling and shopping there as well. So they're trying to create a bit more infill, which all councils across WA anywhere are trying to do. So there is a lot of opportunity there. What I would say is that you really need to do your homework. The costs of subdivision, I think most people would underestimate that. So your mum and dad investors that are trying to subdivide a 900 square metre block in Spencer Park to 450 roughly square metre battle axe, survey strata, whatever they're doing.
Hard to get a return.
Yeah, it can be, because the front house needs to look appealing enough.
Otherwise, it diminishes the value of the back house.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct. And not to mention
land costs are probably not that high anyway.
That's right. Exactly. So you can still go to your McHale and your Bayonet Head and get your 550 square metre block to whatever, 600, 700 square metres. Build a house there. You're not far away, are you? So whilst they'd love that infill, people can still go 11 minutes out of town
and get a block similar size.
Or bigger.
Yeah.
And build a brand new home. So it is slowly happening, but there isn't a lot of margin in it if you are wanting to do a flip.
That probably is demonstrated in the fact that from my experience, I don't see a lot of infill happening in Albany, probably because it's just not that necessary yet. There's still enough land. There's still enough opportunities for people to be living within a very accessible location. Wherever you are in Albany, you're always pretty close to the local Coles or Bunnings and those sort of places.
Correct. Yep.
Bonus question, Denmark. You do a bit of work in there. How's the market there compared to Albany, for example, if you were explaining Denmark to an Albany person?
Yeah, I think people underestimate the value of Denmark. I think when people get there, they're a little bit overawed about the pricing over there. And again, it's a very tight market, very, very tight market. So being that it's tight supply and demand, things are fairly pricey. Even getting a rental there is pretty hard to do.
Rental's impossible nearly. It's given the fact that there's nothing available
Correct.
in Denmark. That's what's pushing the prices right now.
Yep.
It's come off a very small base, though. Is there a concern that the second the demand falls away, will prices fall away pretty quickly with it?
Look,
it certainly has grown a lot.
Yeah, I just don't think Albany and Denmark can really fall away that much. I look at what's available. I look at where the demand's coming from. I look at what we've got in our future. I just don't see it falling away like it did in 09, 10, 11. So, I think, yes, there will come a point where we come back, but I just don't see it coming back that much. And when is it going to come back? So a lot of people are saying, the market's come off the boil and it's really coming back now. But what I see is perhaps the desperation is gone. But it's still tight.
Brendan Ptolemy explains the Southwest, and especially Dunsborough and Bustleton, as it's been white hot for a few years
Correct.
now. And if you had an induction cooktop, it's come off 10 and gone back to 9 or 8.
Yeah, spot on.
It's certainly not sitting at 5 out of 10.
Absolutely not.
And Albany, I assume, has got a similar vibe. And you know what? Perth's run the same track. Karratha has as well right now. We've had a couple of years of insanity. And I tell you what, though, if I had to choose between this market in Perth, and I assume you say the same about Albany, and the one we had 4 years ago, you'd be choosing this every day of the week.
Absolutely.
Last question, favourite street in Albany?
Something like a Hare Street or a Wiley Crescent for me. So I love the view. A few sort of people say that it's sort of Snob Hill up there, and so it's Mount Clarence Middleton Beach, and it runs sort of along the hill. Horizontally.
Paint the picture for me. What are we looking at here off this view?
So when you're up there on the hill, you're looking over the golf links, Middleton Beach Golf Course. You're looking over Lake Seppings. You're looking over Emu Point. You're looking over Middleton Beach, Middleton Bay, King George Sound, back over to Miramar. You've got the lights at night. You've got the ocean in the day, and it's east facing, but you get all the morning sun. It's just stunning for mine. Lots of people will argue with me that Good Beach is a better view, but, for me, Good Beach, you're just looking at ocean, which is great, don't get me wrong, but the Middleton Beach view is amazing. But you know what? There's so many great streets in Albany. Vancouver streets are just dipped in history, and you're in the view. You can walk around the CBD. There's so many.
Kyle Sproxton, Merrittfield Real Estate. Mate, it's been such a pleasure to have you in. Thank you for coming up to share Albany, your hometown, with us. I'm a big fan of this location. If you haven't been for a holiday, guys, go down. If you've got nothing planned for Christmas, Albany's your place to be. I've had a great time. Thank you very much, Kyle. I'll speak to you again soon.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Perth Property Show. If you've only just joined the conversation, you can catch up by heading over to our website, perthpropertyshow.com.au, subscribing to the podcast, or joining our Facebook page. Don't forget to tune in next Monday at 7 a.m. for more expert insights, local analysis, and suburb spotlights. Happy hunting!